Anti-salmon farm activists are at it again this summer. A group has recently stormed and occupied a farm belonging to Marine Harvest Canada near Alert Bay, British Columbia. Salmon farms in British Columbia aquaculture were the first industry targeted by the now infamous US-based foundations who've campaigned to interfere in Canadian resource development. More likely, you've seen the work of Vivian Krause, who uncovered that U.S. charities like the Tides Foundation and the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation were funneling U.S. funds to partners in BC to fight against pipelines, fracking, and forestry. But Vivian's early work also uncovered the activism against salmon farms. But in recent years, the champion of anti-salmon farm activists is American biologist Alexandra Morton. And well, I'll have to use the term biologist lightly here, as her credentials in the biology field is not a bachelor's degree, but a 2-year diploma from American University. Morton led a phony pseudoscience campaign against BC salmon farms last summer, where she took a vessel from the radical activist group Sea Shepherd Society and proceeded to harass employees at various salmon farms around Vancouver Island. Morton is back at it again and in the news recently, so it's no surprise to me that she is one of the people participating in this illegal occupation of private property up in Alert Bay. Last summer, I took it upon myself to visit a salmon farm and get feedback from the folks on the ground in the industry, the people who are actually being besmirched by activists like Morton. And what I learned was incredible, because just about every myth pushed by anti-salmon farm activists like Alexandra Morton were proven false. And this is from my own observations, or from the genuine care that I observed from employees that they display for both the farm salmon and the overall wild environment they work in. The salmon farm I happened to visit was also owned by Marine Harvest Canada, the very same company currently facing occupation from Alexandra Morton and her gang of activists near Alert Bay. According to a Globe and Mail article, the activists claim the farm is threatening their traditional way of life by impacting wild salmon and herring stocks. And there's also demanding an overall end to open net fish farming. Ernest Alfred, a First Nations leader from the region, was quoted by the Globe and Mail saying, quote, "We can't sit by. I cannot sit by any longer while these farms continue to infest our waters, putting all of our marine ecosystems at risk. The time for the very long debate about fish farms has passed. These licenses of occupation need to be removed immediately." Unquote. Now, if it were only up to the Globe and Mail and other media party publications to deliver the news on issues like this, you'd think that there was uniform opposition from all First Nations in the area, and these activists speak for them, rather than the actual truth being that these activists are the fringe minority. In fact, hundreds of First Nations are employed in aquaculture, and last year I spoke to one of them. Harold Seward is a hereditary chief of his clan.
I started fishing. Well, I was born into a fishing family, commercial fishing, and I started working when I was 9 years old. I started running my own boat when I was 19 and have been every year, and I'm 60 now. I still am operating my commercial seiner as a herring fisherman and a salmon, and on the other side of the coin I am also working with the salmon farming industry. I haven't seen any negative impact from the fish farms.
I really like Harold. That guy had more information about the water and salmon farming in his pinky finger than I'll ever acquire in my lifetime. But as is often the case, Harold didn't want to actively or overtly speak out against the First Nations activists that join people like Alexandra Morton in opposing the jobs that people like Harold have. Fortunately, though, one local First Nations leader, Chief John Smith of the Slowlowites First Nation on northern Vancouver Island, who just so happened to have a long-time partnership with another salmon farming company called Greek Seafoods, was, well, not so nuanced in his message for Alexandra Morton and her activists, First Nations or otherwise.
And Alexandra Morton should just tell the truth, not half-truths, because that's what she uses, and she easily bamboozles people because she's good at it. And she can stay the hell out of our territory, because I don't like to be invaded. That's just simple.
Well, how about that? Blunt and direct. Stay the hell out of that man's territory. Look, this is such an important industry to British Columbia. As demand for seafood around the world grows, it's imperative to balance aquaculture with wild commercial fishing. We are so lucky in British Columbia to have the world's best wild salmon. So it's understandable that if you're a British Columbian, maybe you don't always enjoy farm salmon in comparison. I know I haven't bought farm salmon in months, well, because it's summer and that's when the best fresh wild salmon is available. But before you condemn this industry just because you don't like the product compared to its wild counterpart, that is no reason to suggest it doesn't have a place in British Columbia's economy. After all, the world needs more seafood, and BC can provide it, both wild and farmed. For the Rebel.media, I'm Christopher Wilson. Whether it's media institutions or bigger institutions like Google and YouTube, they want to shut us down here at The Rebel. But we know one thing, you want us to keep going. So go to istandwiththerebel.com and show your support